Okay, this next section is 8.5. So it's called using the distributive property. So basically the first part is, can you take the GCF out of a binomial or a trinomial? So the first one I did for you, 27y squared plus 18y. So you got 27 and 18. What's the greatest number they have in common? Well, it's 9. For the variables, you go, okay, this has 2 y's because it's y squared. This one has 1 y. So when you do the variables, it's backwards. You think, what's the least amount of y's they both have? Well, this has 2, this has 1, so the smallest number is 1. So you write that y out. Then you put parentheses and go, okay, what's left over? 27 divided by 9 is 3. 2 y's, take 1 out as 1. Then you bring down your sign. Positive 18 divided by 9 is positive 2. Had a y, you took it out, there's none left. So you close your parentheses. How you check your answer is you can distribute it back in, make sure you get the right one. And also, you check the inside and go 3 and 2. Do they have anything in common? Is there anything that makes both of them? No. Other than 1, no. And then do they have any variables in common? Because sometimes these numbers get big, or maybe you get frustrated, or you just have a brain fart and you forget what numbers these have in common. So if you notice these are both even, maybe they have 2 in common, you just basically pull out a GCF again and put it out front with that number if you maybe did not pull all the way, if they have something common in the middle. So we're going to look at this problem right here. Negative 4a squared b minus 8ab squared plus 2ab. So the first rule of thumb is your first term should always be positive once it's in the right order. Well, this is already in the right order. So we go, okay, we have negative 4, negative 8, and 2. What's the number that goes into all of them? I always look at the smallest number and go, does 2 go into all of these? Yes, it does. Okay, because they're all even. So then, because this first number is negative, I'm going to pull out a negative 2. Then you look at the a's. 2 a's, 1a, 1a. So they all have a's. That's good. So then what's the smallest amount of a's they all have? It's 1. 1b, 2 b's, 1b. Okay, they all have b's. Good. What's the smallest they have? It's b. We're going to write what's left over. Negative 4 divided by negative 2 is positive 2. Had 2 a's, took 1 out. There's an a left. Had a b, took 1 out, none left. Negative 8 divided by negative 2 is positive 4. Had an a, took an out, none left. Had 2 b's, took 1 out, have 1 left. Okay, positive 2 divided by negative 2 is negative 1. Had an a, took an out. Had a b, took it out. That means there's no variables left. How you know you did this right also is count the number of terms on the inside. There has to be the same amount of terms, remember, between the plus and minuses at the top, because a lot of people will forget that minus 1. Okay, doing that prepares us for factoring by grouping. Grouping is used when we have even amounts of terms, like 4 or more. It's usually 4 or 6. In this class, we only do 4. Okay, you'll do 6 when you get into the other algebra class. So this, for example, says ax plus bx plus ay plus by. So this is the hard part, because you're going to want to group these based on all kinds of things. The numbers are the last thing you think of. You think of the variables. You go, okay, these are both x's and they're next to each other. That's good. These are both y's and they're next to each other. So that's the easiest kind, when they're only 2 kinds of variables and it's just that easy. So then you go, okay, put parentheses around the first group. Whatever sign is in that middle, you make sure you put it with that third term. You go, what do they have in common? Well, this one's really easy because there's no numbers. You use x. What do these two have in common? Okay, y. Whatever these two have in common, they have to be the same here. That's how you know you did it right. So then you go, okay, these two have it in common. It's like a GCF. You rewrite it once because you're pulling that thing out. And then what was left over? X plus y. And that's all grouping is. The hard part is looking at the variables. So, for example, 1 I did for you. 4qr plus 8r plus 3q plus 6. So, see how these both have r's? So that means that's good. And then you will look at your other variable, q. So I could have put the q's together, but why rearrange it? So then you look at the q's. See how this q's in the front of this group of parentheses? That means I want this q to be in the front of the group, because you want them to be in the same location, because they have to look the same in those parentheses. So the q's are both in front, and these both numbers are positive. That'll help us later. Okay? So then we can do the grouping. 4qr and 8r. 4 and 8 has the number 4 in common. They both have r's. When I pull 4 and R out and divide them, I'm left with Q, or 1Q. You can put the 1 if you want. And then 8R divided by 4 and take away the R, you're left with just the number 2. So then you come over here. 3 and 6, you pull out a 3. This still had a Q. 6 divided by 3 is 2. These are exactly the same. So I underlined them, I almost always do. Put the answer right there. And then what was left over, I put it in its own sets of parentheses, okay? Now we're gonna move down to this one. First parentheses around the first 2, put parentheses including the sign around the last 2. So for Rn plus 5n. So 1 and 5 really have nothing in common. Technically they have number 1 in common. And the only variable they have in common is n. So we're left with R. Take away the n from 5, and you're left with 5. So that means we want this exactly to be the same. So positive R and positive 5. So see how these are both negative? Since these are positive and these are negative, we want them to be positive. We're going to have to pull out a negative 1 because we want them to be exactly the same. And then there's no variables in common, so then negative by negative is a positive R. Negative by negative is a positive 5. See how they're the same? Then I can write what they are. I always write the thing that's the same first and then write what's left over. So then n minus 1 was what was left over. You can do the same thing over here. Now this one, and a lot of them, you have to pay attention to the variables. So let's look at 7. 2mk minus 12m plus 42 minus 7k. Now, the m's, look, those are together. Now, so the m's are together, good. Now we want to look at the k. See how this k is in front? That means if I made 2 groups, we would want both my k's to be in front of the groups. But is my k in front here? It is not. So that means we want to switch these 2 variables. Now, to move them around, because they're adding and subtracting, you can just move them around. You don't have to do any math. You just have to switch their spots and take their signs with them. So I'm going to rewrite it. 2mk minus 12m. I just rewrote that one. And then this one, I'm just going to switch their order. So negative 7k plus 42. So that way my k's are both in front. So now I can pull the GCF and do all that fun grouping stuff. So 2 and 12 have the number 2 in common, and they have the letter M in common. I'm left with k minus 6. So I want a positive k minus 6. So you see how this says negative 7k, but I want a positive k. That means this also helps you. So, okay, I need positive. This is negative. So say, how do I get from here to here? You pull out a negative 7. So if I divide that by negative 7, I just get k. If I divide 42 by negative 7, I get negative 6. And you still get the same thing on the insides. So then I still write k minus 6 first, because those are the things that were in common. And then 2m minus 7 in the second group. And if you FOIL this back out, you'll get those 4 terms. That's how you can always check your work, okay? Now, I have another one right here. This one is not in order either. If you look at it, it says 3p minus 2p squared minus 18p minus 27. Okay? When it has just one variable, it should be in greatest to least form. So that 2p squared should be in front. There was a line here, you just can't see it because I wrote over it. It should be out in front. And then since I have 2 p's, like one that has just a p and one has another p, that happens, you just put them. It doesn't matter which one you put where. If you want, you can pick. I just keep them in the order they are, or like put them the negatives in the same spot if they have negatives. So all I did was move that in front, and you see it, negative 2p, and then I just slide everything over that way, and I put their groups together and pulled them out, and I got this answer. So you can always try that one and see if you get the same answer as me. Okay, same thing with 4 over here. This one was already in the right order. See, the p's are together. See how the n's were in front? That one was already ready to go. Okay, now if you look at 5 was also ready to go. Had 2 w cubes together, that's good, and then my t's were in front. Already ready to go. Pull out your w's, pull out your 10, have the same number. Number 9, you had c and cd, and D and 4. Now, the C's were together, but if I make my groups, if I were to just look at it real quick, C and D, D and 4. Well, my C's are together, but my D's are not in the same spot. Okay, this D's in the front, this D's in the back. So I was like, okay, well, it's just easier to move this up front. So I rewrote the whole thing, but put this term with a D up front. Now I could have chose to put that in the back. It does not matter, okay? It really does not. Our answers may be a little different. I always choose to put something up front than in the back, okay? So if I move this up, then it's negative 2CD plus C plus 8D minus 4. Now, remember, the first term should always be positive. So this negative 2CD, I'm not just, because they have no number in common other than 1, you're going to want to apply a negative with it because you want that first term in the first parentheses to always be positive. So you pull out a negative with it, then the C, so 2D minus 1. Then you want this to be 2D minus 1. So this one was already set up to be positive. That's why you had to pull out that negative. Add the 4, pulled it out. Okay? This one down here, number 10, this is a good example because I was just doing it quickly and I wanted to show you of what it's like when you don't pay attention to the variables. So this one had 15a minus 3ab plus 4b minus 2. So my a's were together and didn't even pay attention where my b's were, just like this one where the d's and b's were in the wrong spot. So I did this, pulled out a GCF and looked. It's the same kind of numbers almost. Oh, this should be a 5. But look, they're not in the same spot, and my b is negative here and positive here, and negative positive b, 5 here, negative 5. So everything's just a little wrong. My order's wrong, but my signs are wrong, right? Like they're almost correct, they're opposites. So I had to rewrite it so that my b's were in the same spot. So all I had to do was switch these, just like I did in 9. So I switched to put the b's in front, pulled that negative out so I could do the right problem. Okay, so you gotta pay attention. So let's try this one because we have to rearrange this one too. Can you see it? Okay. So 4ab squared plus 21 plus 12b squared plus 7. So I have a and b right next to it. Do I have any variables? I don't. I need variables next to each other. So this is the constant term. Remember I said this all the way, it's all the way up here on number 2 too. Anytime you just have a constant term, most of the time, if you look at them, all of these, look, your constant terms are always in the back. They're always at the end because they have no variable on them. Okay, so this guy needs to go all the way back there. If I just scooted him and took him out, would I have 2 variables the same actually if I could ignore him? B squared and b squared right next to each other. So let's write it and see what it looks like. 4ab squared plus 12b squared plus 7a plus 21. So if I had 2 groups with these, let's look at them. B squareds are together. Do I have a's in front? Yep, then that one can work. So now 4 and 12 have 4 in common. They both have the b squareds, that's why I picked them. So left over, you got a on that one. Over here, you got plus 3. Okay, so this one should be the same. Since a is just here, that means I need to get rid of that 7, so it should be plus 7 out here. A, 21 divided by 7 is 3. Look, they're exactly the same. You have a plus 3. And then what's left on outside? 4b squared plus 7. Okay, all of these are here. I may not gone over all of them, but they're there for you to pause and look at and see if you get the same answer to me. The answer is always at the end. Okay, let me know.